Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Welcome to the Excel Leading Conversations webinar. What are we doing today? I'm going to start over. What do we do? It's not a webinar, is it? It's a conversation. I don't even need to start over. I'm just going to keep going with that. I want to introduce our special guests today. Just incredible people. And if you would indulge me, I've always wanted to do this intro of you, Larry, because of a certain player on the Colorado Rockies. I don't know if you ever visited the Rockies like 10, 15 years ago, but they would always announce their right fielder as Larry Walkemeyer. His name was Walker. It was the coolest thing. And I think I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer, but Larry and Deb Walkemeyer are our guests today, and they're Hall of Famers in my book. So thank you guys for being here.
That's a great privilege to be here, JD.
Have you ever heard that intro? Have you ever heard the Larry?
No. I've had some wild ones, especially in the Philippines.
Larry Walkemeyer.
Do you know who Larry Walker is?
No.
No. Okay. He was a great player. He was like the only good player on the team. So anyway, thanks for being here. I'd like to just start by saying, hey, tell us your story. Tell us how each of you came to faith in Christ.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I guess I'll start. I was actually in junior high school and went to junior high camp and heard about Jesus. And I was so excited. I mean, and I had been in church as a child, but it's like the dots all connected for me at camp. And even I was telling my counselor in my cabin room, and I said, hey, I'm giving my life to Jesus tonight. And she goes, well, you can do it right now. And I said, no, going forward tonight I'm going forward. So walked down. I couldn't wait at the end of his message to get down there, start praying and giving my life to Jesus. And then I've walked with Jesus the rest of my life and have just really committed myself to, Lord, here I am. Use me. The next year at camp, that was kind of my prayer. Lord, here I am, use me. And that was like my initial callings into ministry, actually, and got very active in Youth for Christ, campus life, went to Zeus Pacific University, met Larry, and the rest is history, because when we got married, I had just graduated from APU, and I was 22, Larry was 20. And then I guess, yeah, Larry, I know you love to talk, so I'm going to let you fill in the gaps.
So you robbed the cradle of sorts.
Yeah, I'm a cougar. And what's funny is Zeus Pacific, our mascot, are cougars. So I am a true cougar.
And she was a cheerleader and homecoming queen. And she was a senior and I was a freshman because she skipped a grade and I was a little slow. So I was back a grade.
But that sounds really weird.
But we're only 18 months apart. But back to Jesus.
Yes. Larry, tell us your story.
Yeah, I'm a Kansas farm boy, and my parents both loved Jesus. My daddy died when I was 2 of cancer, and my mom was just such a godly woman. I remember making a clear profession of faith at 8. I was baptized at 10, and I was called into a full-time ministry at 12 at a summer camp. And there's only 2 things I've wanted to be. One was a pro football player. And then after the age of 12, I wanted to be a minister of the gospel. So that's where I just directed my life and my efforts towards. And I went to Zeus Pacific on a football scholarship because I could study for the ministry there. And they started flying me up to San Jose as youth pastor on weekends at a certain church up there. And then we got married and just went into youth ministries full time for the next 12 years. And so there's a lot more to the story, but Jesus has been really, really amazing to us.
Mm-hmm.
That is wonderful. Well, tell us a little bit about the details. How did you meet? How did the cheerleader meet the freshman?
Oh, I like this story. Go ahead.
Oh, we have 2 different versions of it, actually.
Have you go first, and then we'll hear the rebuttal.
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay. Well, basically, I was the first dropout of Azusa Pacific's nursing program. And so my fourth year, halfway through.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. You're the first one that has congratulated me. But yeah, because of that, the next semester I changed my major. I was in the library and I was doing a research paper for my psych class. And I knew all football players, but I saw this new football player guy who was in the library that I had never seen before. If I hadn't dropped out of nursing, I wouldn't have been in the library. So I loved that I saw his Bible sitting there. So when he got up to go get a book, I wandered over to look at the name imprinted on his Bible. So there is a reason to get a hard, literal Bible and have your name put on it, because that's how I got his name. And so when I went back to the dorm, I asked one of my friends, have you heard of Larry Walkemeyer? She goes, oh yeah. Here he is a freshman. I'm a senior. Mm-hmm. And she goes, oh yeah, he thinks he's God's gift to women. You do not want to go there.
That is so not true.
It is true. I even know her name, but I won't say it out loud.
Well,
And
before you go further, Larry, I want you to know my wife went to Azusa Pacific, and
Oh, really?
about the same time, and it's exactly 42 miles from UCLA. I can tell you that because we were dating, and then she was at Santa Monica College, and she went. And I'm really glad, Deb, that you snatched up Larry, because that let my wife just have to settle for somebody like me.
Right.
Back in those days, let me just say this. I remember, I think it was like the fourth time I went to the school. I thought, where did this mountain come from?
yeah,
Because it was just so smoggy.
exactly. You couldn't even see the mountain. It's right there.
Yeah, one time I just pulled up. It's like, when did they move that in? But anyway.
Yeah, that was the Chamber of Commerce day when they go take all their pictures. The one day that there was no smog, because it had probably rained the day before. Yeah, but one thing about Larry that I was excited about was he was a football-looking player guy, so I figured he was a football player, and he had a Bible with his name on it. So that's what really attracted me to it. So just to finish up my part of the story, the next few days later, I was in the cafeteria, and there was my girlfriend sitting at the cafeteria table with Larry and another guy that I knew. And I'm like, I kind of know now why she told me not to mess with him. So I sat myself right on down there at that table. and I said, okay, hi, I'm Deb. What's your name? Gail, introduce me to your friend. Oh, I gave you your first name. Let me introduce me to your friend, please. And so she did. And then within an hour and a half, I had convinced all of us to go snow skiing at Mammoth. We loaded up all of our gear, got in a car, and drove up to Mammoth to go skiing for the weekend. And the rest is history.
Yep, and we've been skiing together ever since.
Yes.
Let's hear from the God's gift to women. Let's see if if he has a different story.
Oh no, I'll just stay with hers for today. But
you know it's true.
But yeah, no, I knew who she was because she was a big woman on campus. And I was this dorky Kansas farm boy, and in the big city and trying to figure things out. And but I was passionate for Jesus, that's for sure. And so was she. And so as soon as we spent that weekend with our friend group at Mammoth, we started dating, and Jesus really was the center of our relationship, and we've kind of been doing ministry ever since. And that was 45.
That was in 77. Yeah.
Wow. So did you talked a little bit about your call to ministry? Did you guys both feel called before you actually met?
Well, I would say mine was I was very active in Youth for Christ all through college, actually. So I felt very called, but I always thought I was going to be a counselor, marriage family counselor. I did become one way later in my life, but I wouldn't say I have felt called to professional ministry. And then I met Larry, And then as the years have gone on, as different people had identified these things in me, I really began to see that, that time in 7th grade when I said, "Here I am, Lord, use me. I'm available for whatever you want." I knew that was the starting point of that, where I knew that I was called to be used by the Lord. Because it was a year later that I was very active, getting really active in doing even youth ministries while I was in high school.
Yeah, and I, like I said, I was called at 12, and I just never questioned that call all the way through. And that's why I went to Azusa and took all the Bible classes and jumped into ministry. And I can remember being at the Los Angeles Rescue Mission, and here I am, an 18-year-old kid from Kansas, standing up and preaching to 500 homeless folks, and they were doing all kind of weird things during my sermon. It's like they just wanted the free meal afterwards. And God moved in powerful ways, and we really did see men and women get saved in those times at the LA Union Rescue Mission. And so the Lord's just been really, really faithful. And I thought I'd always been youth ministries, but then the Lord called us to lead pastoring, and that was an interesting journey too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talk about the church planting connection. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I came to Long Beach in 1991, I'd moved out of youth ministries to become a lead pastor at this small little urban church, handful of white people in a very diverse neighborhood. They were trying to keep the doors open, no pastor. And Deb and I, it's just an amazing call, supernatural call that brought us there, because they were offering us this large white suburban church. They were going to buy us a house up there where we were ministering and make us lead pastors there. And we really felt like we just assumed that's God's will. But as we prayed about it, God revealed to us both separately that we were to go to a little place in Long Beach. And so when I came, it was the height of the church growth movement, and all I wanted to do was build the biggest church I could. But I looked around, and I just read the #1 book on church growth, and it said to grow your church, the #1 thing you need is to have adequate, convenient parking. And I looked at our 39 spots and said, "Oh God, what are we going to do?" But we began to prayer walk the neighborhood and pray, "Lord, help our church look like our neighborhood," and ask our neighbors, "How can we serve you?" Mm-hmm. And the Holy Spirit began to move in just a powerful way. And within, we began to grow rapidly, and we became the fastest growing church in our denomination one year. You win a plaque, and the bishop comes and gives you the plaque, and everybody cheers, and we're like, "We're going to win it again next year, but we're going to have to relocate to win it." And so Deb and I were like, "Oh yeah, what are we going to do? We're going to relocate to a safer neighborhood, lots of parking." And Deb is much more tuned into the Holy Spirit than me.
I wouldn't say that, but thank you.
It is. It's true. And she said, "Honey, we should not just assume this. We should go away and pray." So we went away for a week and prayed and fasted, and separately, this amazing part of the story, JD, that separately, as we were seeking the Lord took us to Ezekiel 47. And in Ezekiel 47, Ezekiel sees the temple, and a trickle comes out of the temple that becomes a brook, that becomes a stream, that becomes a mighty river, and it changes everything, this river. And where the river flows, everything will live, verse 9 says. And God grabbed both of our hearts and said, "You've been building a lake church where everybody flows in around you, Larry, gives to one budget, builds one vision, yours, and you keep everybody in so that the lake gets bigger." And the Lord said, "That's not the vision I have for Light and Life and for you and Deb. I want you to become a river church where people will flow in, but then they'll flow out to bring life wherever I send them." And that was the birth of this river church vision, which meant we were going to start planting churches. And we'd never planted a church, right, Deb? Deb, you want to add to that?
Well, yeah. So when we got back, of course, we had to start convincing our leadership that we're going to be planting churches. And they're like, what? We're growing. We're going to be moved. We're going to try to move. And we're going to do what? And we prayed together. We got the church going on a 40-day fast, started praying around the neighborhood. And we just said, we've got to ask God what he wants, because if he gave this vision to us, he's going to give it to all of us. And the church began to get excited about it. And so we created Mission 2010, and we were going to plant a church in every city council district from 2000 to 2010. We were going to plant a church in every city council district, which there's 9 in the city of Long Beach. So, we're about 8 miles, so that's about the reach, the expanse. And people thought we were crazy, because you're going to plant how many churches in that one little section of, and you want that many churches? It's like, well, yeah, we want people to have neighborhood churches they can walk to, because we're landlocked here in Long Beach. There's just not properties available, and they haven't given conditional use permits to a church. They've given 1 or 2, Larry?
Three in 30 years.
In the last 30 years.
And no new evangelical church building has been built.
Nothing has been built.
30 years.
And so it's really unrealistic to think we actually could be planting a church unless we moved out of Long Beach. So that was like the launch of all of that. And Larry and I planted the first church, Light and Life Belmont, because we wanted to make sure we knew what we were doing. And that was just really an exciting time.
Talk about that for a second, because there's a lot of discussion, and I think every church says they want to plant someday. How did you get off the dime and do the first one? And it sounds like you did the prayer thing, the 40-day thing. I mean, that's brilliant. But how did that happen in Belmont?
Yeah, that's a great question, JD. And just about the 40-day fast, for example, everybody fasts. Almost everybody in the church fasted something, but I fasted everything but clear liquids for 40 days, and I lost 38 pounds. And it was just the church saw how serious we were as a church about this. And so to switch the operating system from church growth to church multiplication or church planting was difficult. But like Deb said, we had never planted a church, and we lived the furthest you could live from the church in the city of Long Beach, in very different neighborhood, highly affluent, highly educated neighborhood. But we just said, if God just talked to us as a family, actually, Deb and me and our teenage daughter, and we'd been reaching out to our neighbors and said, if you're going to start this church planting thing, maybe you ought to plant a church, Larry. And so how about Sunday evenings? And so we started gathering neighbors and a few folks from our existing church in our living room. And pretty soon that became 2 other life
small groups.
And when we had 3, then we launched publicly in a recreation, in a community center near our home. And we were off and running and planting that. And people said, hey, well, I guess we're actually doing this. Our pastors are doing it. Deb wasn't pastoring with me at that time. You were still married.
No, I just came on staff. I had stopped my counseling practice. Yeah.
So you're obviously doing the existing church in the morning.
Yeah.
And then going Sunday night. Wow. That's fantastic. That's a great model for people. Hey.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but you know what? We were very convicted, because it's kind of like, well, the Lord is like asking us, what are you doing on Sunday night? And when we're asking about all of this, and we're like, oh, maybe watching Netflix. Well, there wasn't Netflix back then. Watching a VHS movie that we got from Blockbuster. Let's be honest. Let's talk about the real reality here. Right. But and we're like vegging, and it's like there's a whole mission field. And we were just seeing such a great response from our neighbors in our little neighborhood in Long Beach here. And we're just like, oh my goodness, we can't ignore this anymore. Yeah. We got to do something. They weren't going to drive to the north end of Long Beach to go to church.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not going to ask you about all of them, but then how did number 3 happen?
Yeah. So once they saw how serious we were, I started a group called MOGS, which stood for Ministers of God. And I said, there were 2 or 3 people, including one that I wanted to hand off Belmont to, because I knew I couldn't. Belmont was growing, and I had to make a decision. We had to make a decision between going with the new church plant or staying with the mother church. That was one of the hardest ministry decisions we've ever made, because we had to turn our baby over to somebody else. But it was a good decision. But so we started really looking for these leaders in-house that could be capable of planting a church. And I began to gather them. There were about 7 or 8. I said, you've got the potential to be a church planter. And I started meeting weekly with them, and we just started praying, and we'd put the city map in the middle of the table. We'd all lay hands on it and say, is God calling you to plant in one of these city council districts? And we would resource on church planting. And they'd come down and visit our Belmont church on Sunday nights. And so and eventually we looked and said, okay, the next one is going to be, and it was Jim and Karen Blythe. And so they were going to.
Sorry, Larry. I was just going to say, what was really interesting is that the first part of our journey before church planting, we were finding that some of our growth were people who had actually been in ministry, burned out, beat up, left ministry, but started attending Light and Life. And then as they started getting mended and healed, they wanted to get involved in leadership, but our leadership positions were all filled. I mean, they're really for key leaders like that. We really didn't have anything. And these were people who were like, I'm never doing ministry again. Don't ask me to do anything. But God was stirring their hearts. But now, looking back, we can really say that what God was doing was preparing all these people for this vision of church planting, when they were going to then be healed, mended, and brought into a place where we could say, we have seasoned leaders who know ministry and pastoring, and we can now begin to use them to help build teams to plant.
And so one of the things we did was, once we identified the next planter, I began to have him preach, first co-preach with me and then preach. And every time he was up there, I would say, hey, Jim's going to go plant a church, and God's going to talk to a lot of you about going with him. And we want as many as feel called by God to go with Jim. And so this went on like 9-12 months. And then we have a launch Sunday, and we wash Jim and Karen's feet. We call up all those that are going with them. And we have, at that point, we're a church about 800 or 900, and we have 75, 80, 90 people that stand up on stage behind Jim and Karen and say, we're going. And Light and Life Bixby was going out the door. And that was always scary Sundays, because we didn't control who went. We didn't know sometimes who went. Sometimes we'd have close friends that would end up like coming up on stage. They're like, what? You're going on the plant? I'm your pastor. What are you doing?
Wow. Hey, can you talk just a little bit? You mentioned it was a tough decision. Maybe just what's 1 or 2 things that went into you deciding to stay rather than go with the Belmont plant?
Yeah, I think one was we had a really gifted leader that really felt called to Belmont, that I'd been mentoring, and I knew that they could really take it forward.
Well, Mark and Terry. Mark had come on to staff as the associate pastor at Belmont. Yeah. And so people loved him. He was already in place on the team there, and really is just a fantastic preacher. He had all of those gifts.
And so, but the mother church still really, this was the hub of the church planting, and this thing was already rolling up at Mom. And so when I looked at, we didn't feel released from North, Light and Life North, it's called. And so because of the momentum of planting, because of the lack of release, we just felt like, this is going to kill us, but we're going to turn over our baby.
Now, how many churches have you done out of Light and Life?
Well, with using this same model, sometimes as few as 7, like that when we sent to Philadelphia, a group of 7, for example. Most of them have been within commuting distance, so we could use this model. We've had up to 25% of our church population go on one church planting Sunday. And that is scary when it comes to tithes and offerings, man. But and they're only 10 minutes away, and now they're actually larger than we are at the Mother Church. Praise the Lord. But I say praise the Lord because that's still a part of my sanctification process. Because yes, I say praise the Lord. but what was the question?
How many, Larry? How many
how
we
many?
planned? I'd say about
25.
32. No,
well, 32, yeah. And but a couple of those have kind of been restarts, but we've averaged about one or more a year for the last 23 years. We started in 99 when we did Belmont. So last 23 years, we've averaged a little over one a year.
And quite a few actually globally. So we're not only planning.
Well, none of those 32 are globals.
No, we have hundreds globally.
Yeah. So we did I did a lot of missions work. Deb did some missions work, and we've been in Ethiopia, the Philippines, Indonesia, Mexico,
Central America.
So is this a reproducible model, do you think, for other churches?
Well, I think for some, it's certainly not the model for all, but I think that there is something that happens when a church becomes so outwardly focused, becomes so convinced of the power of church planting as being if you plant evangelistic churches, not just if you shift the saints around. I'm not interested in that. But if you're planting evangelistic, gospel-centered churches, this is by far the best way to reach the most lost people. And once your church is convinced of that and is willing to pay the price of generosity, radical generosity, giving away your best, not knowing how the Lord's going to fill up the coffers again that just walked out the door. It's a faith walk. I think there's so many churches that can move into this model, and it's not a size thing. And that's the thing. There's some pastors really that don't have the leadership ability to pastor much beyond 100 or 150. And they think they really can't have that great impact. Oh, my friend, start sending out in groups of 30 to plant new churches and watch what happens with your influence, and watch God fill the seats back up and do it again.
I think what's reproducible, honestly, is what Larry said, is the generosity mindset. You have to have a generosity mindset that flows out of an abundance mentality where God owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. So if we give away all these leaders and people, he's still going to bring them back into us and take care of us. And so I think that's the model that is reproducible for every single church, because it's Jesus's model. And it also includes hero making, where you're willing to even at times sacrifice your platform, your seat at the table, in order to help someone else become all that they can be in Christ. And then if they're feeling called, you're like, yeah, I support you. Let's do this together. Let me help you, and then launch you to be as strong as you can be. And again, it's just, I hold all things loosely because it's all God's anyway.
Well, let me just jump on that for a sec. You both talk about this, and it's hard, but it has to come from a sense of, personal security. So where did that come for you guys? Because a lot of churches, maybe most pastors, that's not something that they're walking in with.
Well, I can tell you, I personally, even to this day, still struggle with insecurity as a leader. I even had a leadership meltdown that lasted about 18 months in 06, 07. And because of that, I had to do some deep soul work with the Lord. I mean, we're talking 18 months crying and asking God, because I had truly convinced myself that God had only created me to be Lindsay's mom and Larry's wife. And I was not a leader. And yet I had been leading forever. And so it was really very demonic. And I tell people, I said that the thing that how I participated with the devil was by continuing to perpetuate his lie to myself and to others. So my closest friends, my family would tell me, you're crazy, Deb. But it was like, nope, honestly, I could lay out this grand argument why I wasn't a leader. But then when God finally broke it in me, I can tell you that I heard him clearly say, you are a leader of leaders, and this is how I'm going to use you. And so for me, I still struggle with that. But because of having done that deep soul work now, I know that I personally am called to do that. But you have to be, you're right on, JD, if you are not secure in your identity and who you are, if you have faulty identity formation, because I'm a therapist, faulty identity formation, even from your childhood, you're going to struggle. And so that's when I think you see people power up or take control or narcissism, because it flows actually from insecurity. And that actually is going to kill the movement of God quicker than anything. Not anything, but it can quickly kill the movement of God.
Yeah. And
well, Larry, I know you're God's gift to women, and you knew that going in.
At least he had confidence to go after him. I'm glad about that.
Yeah. No,
you didn't have any confidence issues.
No, he didn't.
No, I've battled insecurity, and for me, it was wanting to be a success, and I can still remember being on my face, weeping before the Lord when he was calling me to church plant, because I had to give up and die to my dream of church growth. And not that our church wouldn't necessarily grow anymore, but it's just I had to die to that in order to take on the generosity that would take to give away leaders and people that could have built my thing, but now, no, they're not, they're going out the door. And so for me, Galatians 2:20 is my life verse, for I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and delivered himself up for me. And the Lord has just been really good to me that way. And yeah, and there's a certain different kind of success, I understand, because we've planted churches now, and I on exponential staff and all these things. But man, it's not easy. It is painful if we're not willing to go to the cross. Steve Addison, who's probably one of the world's foremost authorities on gospel movements, he says that every movement leader has died to their own success, and I just think that's so true, because you can't give away and until it's not about you. And so I've wrestled, but I keep coming back to the foot of the cross and say, Lord, I want to be crucified with you. You're my only identity. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being God's gift to church planting. If not. Hey, two last questions. One, just really quick. What is it that you're doing now? Why don't each of you just take a few seconds on what are you guys doing now?
Yeah. So now we turned the church over in January, and we're still on staff as global pastors. And what that means is we're just ambassadors and representatives of Light and Life. And we'll do some of the mission stuff as well, kind of, because we've got networks out there that we'll oversee. But our main full-time job for me and half-time for Deb is that we're the title is Strategic Catalyst for the Free Methodist Church in the United States and beyond. So in our denomination, there are 3 bishops, and we sit on the executive leadership team with 4 other individuals, Deb and I as 2 of those. So 2 other individuals besides ourselves, overseeing the denomination and trying to move us into multiplication, because Free Methodists are in decline in the U.S., but to growing rapidly elsewhere because of church planting. And so, and then also I'm on staff with Exponential as the director of equipping and spiritual engagement. And then Deb is really co-strategist in the position with me, but she's also doing some justice work and some, as she said, some leadership with women leaders across the nation, and with Leadership Network now too.
Yeah. I do miss my community work though, because I ran our community center for almost 10 years. So
she's famous.
I'm famous. She's am
famous
so famous.
Planting the first community garden in Compton, California. And when she got her doctorate from Fuller, they did a photo shoot, and for the last 8 years, they have run full page ads with Deb's picture in it in the Compton Community Garden, in that multi-ethnic setting in that garden. And she's my hero that way too. Very, very,
thanks.
Very courageous woman.
Yeah. I do miss my community work though. And so maybe I'll get back. I hope I get back to that one day when I'm fully retired. If that happens, I'm not sure, but yeah.
Well, hey, one last question. We'll end with this. Just a leadership tip. Each of you have a leadership tip for those of us who are trying to become better leaders. What would you say?
Man. Are you going to go first, Larry, or me? I see you like ready to take a breath. For sure. I have so many. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Learn to collaborate with others. Collaboration makes your ministry more powerful, more productive, more fruitful. Don't be afraid to prune off things that have failed or people who are not doing good things. Speak up for yourself, advocate, especially as a woman, advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to assert yourself, ask for what you need, be honest. Those are some of my tidbits.
Yeah. I think one of my leadership maxims is that you teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. And therefore, it's much more important to become who you want to reproduce and get people close enough that they can catch your fire. It's hard to teach fire, but you pass fire on by being on fire yourself, and then getting people close enough just to catch that fire. And that's how discipleship and leadership really gets multiplied.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for being with us. The great Deb and Larry Walkemeyer, both of them. For being, you guys are a delight. Thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, JD. You guys are
JD.
smashing it. You are our hero, JD. I mean, we're going to learn from you in this new role. So
yes.
Likewise. Hey, God bless. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Blessings. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.